Hello everyone, it's Jeff Rich here from the Burning Archive. I'm starting a new series of videos on the channel which is focused on history and world affairs today, which I'm calling Letters to Americans. And you know, I've focused a lot on the channel over the last few years about my diagnosis, I guess, of the American empire. And it's collapsing, declining state. But I really wanted these videos to focus, I guess, on the kind of change of heart and minds that Americans need to undertake, not just the American government, not just Donald Trump or the deep state or the kings or whoever you might think about, but America as a whole, because I think there is a big cultural problem in America. This cultural problem of thinking it is supreme, that it is better, and that it is rightfully, because it is the home of the free and the brave, or the custodian of Western civilization, or the founding democracy of the West. There is a sense in which it has a special place in the world, and a place in the world where it can decide which government in the world survives, or which country in the world may be attacked or indeed bombed with nuclear weapons. And I had been planning to do this video today, and I sort of checked the news in the morning, and I read that Donald Trump had left the G7 early to go to the White House Situation Room, while, you know, American military assets were deployed near Iran, perhaps to escalate and involve the US on even more deeply in the war against Iran. And indeed, Donald Trump at 3 a.m. in the morning Tehran time, 2 in the afternoon, or 3:30 in the afternoon, or something like that, Washington DC time, warned the citizens of Tehran to evacuate immediately, apparently threatening to bomb, who knows with what kind of weapon, with a nuclear weapon. Yet again, after all, the United States of America is the only state in the world that has used nuclear or atomic weapons against human beings. And not only has it done it in 1945, but it has thought about doing it many, many more times. And has a whole think tank community who like to speculate on how they could potentially undertake a first strike attack against China or Russia, or it would seem now Iran, following some sort of decapitation regime change operation. He may even have been threatening Tehran with nuclear weapons. It is a really dark day, and it's a frightening day, I guess. I may well make another video about just this sense of fear about entering into the tragedy of a world war, an utterly destructive world war. But this statement only highlighted to me the absolute importance of Americans owning the nature of the regime that they have, owning the fact that the United States has been at war for all but 17 years of its existence, that the frequency of its military interventions have increased since 1945 and increased again after the end of the Cold War in 1989. There is no Pax Americana. There is just the US-led war order. And it is devastating for the world. And people like me who live in, I guess, the outer reaches of the US empire, in one of its Pacific imperial provinces of Australia, Indo-Pacific Pacific provinces like Australia, we are exposed to the sort of ideology of empire every day through the journalists, through the state media, through the attitudes of leading intellectuals and politicians in our governments who serve American interests, really, or their own interests by serving American interests, rather than allowing their own country and culture to follow a divergent path to that dictated by America. But the thing about watching America from the other parts of the world is we, in some ways, can hold a mirror up to America, and that was kind of what I was hoping to do in these letters to Americans. I'd be more than happy for people who are watching this video from outside America to share their comments as well, because I feel there is a kind of bubble that Americans live in where they really do believe still that they have some sort of moral leadership in the world, that their country is truly great, that people in the outside world admire their country rather than just flatter and act subserviently to their country, or indeed are afraid of Americans. And I think the thing about Donald Trump's presidency is that illusion is being broken. The sheer crudity, the sheer incompetence, the aggression, the supremacism, the obvious lack of command of concepts and detail and fundamental diplomatic relations with other countries. All those things are just blowing apart any vestiges that somehow America was great. The whole idea that Donald Trump was a peacemaking presidency, that there was an American revolution that was overturning the deep state, and all this sort of nonsense that too many American and American-friendly podcasters kind of fell in for, including some prominent anti-empire and anti-war voices, people even like Scott Ritter, perhaps even people at times like Glenn Deason, who still professes disappointment that Trump was not really negotiating peace. But I think what we've learned is, I think the really important thing to learn is that what Trump reveals is what the American state, the American political culture really is. Trump is not the exception, or if he is the exception that proves the rule. This is what America has done over many, many years, especially since 1945, when it established this strange, astonishing domination over the world. It, occupied Japan, it occupied Korea, it wanted to occupy China, but it sort of lost out to the communist forces and never forgave China until the mid-1970s. Perhaps many Americans like Steve Bannon and Gordon Chang and all those people, they still don't forgive China for being an independent nation rather than an American satrapy. And the same thing holds in Europe, the same thing holds in West Asia. It is an astonishing and utterly unjustifiable and morally indefensible domination of the world. And too many Americans, I think, kind of accept that as the okay base, that, if America, acts in its good spirit, if it lives up to its promise in the way that Barack Obama talked about it in The Promised Land, his autobiography about his presidency, where he really sort of talked about, America being an exceptional experiment that no other country in the world was either capable or willing to do, that, the last hope of Western civilization rested with the United States of America in its good form. That's the same kind of illusion people had about MAGA, and it's the same kind of illusion people had about Joe Biden, for goodness sake, as well. America has acted for too long in the way that it actually has, and has used these sort of fanciful dreams of the American Promised Land simply to cloak its brutality and its empire. And that has got to change. It has got to change, and there needs to be an acceptance, I guess, within among Americans that it's not just some weird guy at the top. It's the American political culture, it's the American political institutions that need to change. American think tanks like to speculate. They like to conduct wars, to operate regime changes. That's what they're doing in Iran now. That's what they started trying to do in Russia in 2022. Putin's got to go. It's what they've done in so many countries around the world. But the regime that really needs to change now is the United States of America. Not just getting rid of someone who thinks he's a king, not just engaging in a lot of sentimental rhetoric about the true America not accepting kings at being a republic. The whole American regime built around its media dominance, its occupation of so many places in the world for military bases, its failure to apologise for Hiroshima, its reckless exceptionism, its decisions to defy international law, and its fundamental attitude of supremacism. I think people will look back in some time, let's say 10 years' time, maybe 20 years' time, and they'll think about American supremacism the way many people around the world nowadays think about the sort of European German fascism of the 1930s and 1940s. So I also reminded myself that a little over 2 years ago, I wrote one of my earliest articles as a sort of writer after leaving government and sort of stepping into this weird world of writing and commenting here on YouTube about geopolitics, history and world affairs. And the article was subtitled by the sub-editors, "The Derangement of the American Mind." But my initial title was "The Defeat of America," because the awkward truth is I just don't know if the kind of change of attitude, the kind of change in culture, the change in regime will really come unless there is a strategic defeat, to use Emmanuel Todd's term, but also a strategic defeat where Americans feel the costs of defeat. There have been many costs of defeat in Afghanistan and Vietnam and other places, but so often Americans let other countries bear the costs of America's military defeats. And I don't know if the reality of the changed world will really sink in that the world is sick of America dominating it until that comes. But in this article, I said that the world, we have a problem. It is Houston, of course, flipping the famous line, says, Houston, we've got a problem. It's America that is presenting the world a problem. And I said it, America is out of control and is the main threat to the world's peace, security, and civilizations. And I have felt that intensely over the last week or so as these appalling events in Iran and West Asia proceed. And I went on to say that America has bullied the world for too long. The Wolfowitz doctrine of the early 1990s still stands. Any place on earth that dares to resist American unipolar dominance must be crushed, and their resistance declared the work of the devil. And isn't that what we're seeing with Donald Trump's statements about Iran? Isn't that what we're seeing with Donald Trump's statements with Iran? It is truly, truly appalling. So it's time, I guess, for the world to speak back to America compassionately, assertively, and to stand up to the real bully in the world, that is the United States. It's a bully who often gets others to do its dirty work. That's what's happening in Ukraine. That's what's happening in Europe. That's what is happening in with Israel and Iran, isn't it? It's ugly also what's happening in East Asia. So, but it is absolutely time for the world to do that, and that's what I want my letters to Americans to really help do, because I think also Americans need to stand up against this kind of thing. There's no point in sort of saying MAGA is betrayed, or, you know, or we're going to lose the American empire, all that kind of thing. You need to, I think Americans really need to accept the fact that they've benefited enormously from the dominance of this empire. They've gained enormous psychological satisfaction from this sort of sense that America, you know, stands taller than the rest of the world, and that sense of impunity, that sense of supremacy, that sense of being the last best hope of Western civilization really must end, that the world has changed and that the world can no longer support the kind of America that America has become. It really is time for regime change in America. I'll be back with another letter to Americans shortly, and do like, share, and maybe check some of my world tour of world history pieces on America at jeffrich.substack.com. Thanks for watching.